Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Aurora City Council's Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Monday, November 16th, 2015. Ms. Martin, please call the roll.
Ms. Varner, Ms. Grandillo.
Here.
Mr. Horvath, Patridge.
Here.
Sorry. Mr. Horvath, Mr. Kovich,
Present.
Mr. Cudley,
Here.
Ms. McDougall, Ms. Vaca, Mr. Vaca.
All right.
Or Mr. Wolf.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. And we want to welcome Colleen to the Committee of the Whole. She, as you know, was appointed as the Deputy Clerk of Council, and so she's assuming the role that Ms. Hawkshead filled for us until the appointment. So welcome aboard and relax. This is easy. This is easy. This is easy. Okay. All right. The first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the October 26, 2015 meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any additions, comments, or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are adopted. We have our finance director's report. Mr. Paul, this
Yes.
is two more after this one, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And I hope it stays as nice as this too, which I anticipate. Anyway, we have completed 84% of the year, and our revenues for the city are at 92% of budget revenue, so we're doing actually about a month ahead of time, almost, with regard to revenue. I think it's crucial because when you look at it, you look at the overall operation of the city, and our revenues are up, they're increased over the budget period. The only thing that I did notice is that the income taxes have remained relatively flat over the last 3 months. It's anywhere from 600 to 650,000. That hasn't grown at all over those 3 months, and I don't know what it's going to come out of the last 2 months of the year. But our expenses, as you are well aware, are certainly way under budget. And so a combination of those two is what I would have projected for approximately $1 million surplus this year. And we'll see how that comes out. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say.
That's a lot. So, any comments or questions for Mr. Paul? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the financial report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Under new business, we have several items. The first is for Stryker medical cot purchase from the fire department. Chief Barnes.
Yes, I'm asking you to approve the purchase of 3 power cots for the squads. These were budgeted at the beginning of the year, and I had some extra expenses in a ladder truck repair, but there is extra funding in the fire levy available to make up the difference, take them out of different accounts. These cots will allow us to lift up to 750-pound patients. We don't usually get them that high, but we've had them as high as 400 pounds. And it will save the guys an extra lift or two when they're putting the patients into the squad and into the hospital beds.
And it's being asked by the administration to forward this to council for its first reading tonight. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to forward to council. Any comments or questions for the chief? Mr. Vaca? Mr. Vaca?
Yeah, Chief, having worked with the old cots for years, I know you lift it up to the floor level. Now, once you get it up, how does it release? Does it release where the guys pick the rail up, or does it automatically come back down electrically?
No, it's powered up and down. So now somebody has to pick the legs up, the wheels of the cot up in the air.
Right.
While somebody else holds the back of the cot. Now they'll
Correct.
both be able to hold the back of the cot and push a button and the wheels will come up.
Okay, they'll come up automatically.
Oh yeah, and they'll come
Okay.
back down automatically too.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yep.
Yeah, having done that for like 20 years, it can be a real backbreaker. And he's right. We had one guy that was a little over 400 pounds, and he was 6'9" tall. And we tried to put him in the old 72 ambulance, which was not long enough, so he had to buckle his legs up. But But this is a bag saver. Believe me, this is a bag saver. Okay,
Thank you. Mr. Hetridge.
Thank you, Mr. Scully. Chief, is there the old cots that are in the vehicles now?
Yes,
Can those be sold or?
yes. Yeah, I'll keep one for a spare in case something breaks down, so I got one immediately to put in, but the other two I'll probably find a way to sell. They don't take them as trade-in, I asked about that, so they do have a company that buys old cots, so I'd be able to get rid of them that way.
Maybe you can barter for some other equipment somewhere else, huh?
Yeah, at least the cash.
Thanks, Chief.
Seeing no further comments, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is item B, the self-contained breathing apparatus purchase for the fire department, Chief.
Yeah, this is replacing current equipment. These units were all purchased with a federal grant in 2003. The bottles that contain the air all expire in 2018. That's the problem. When you purchase them all at once, they all expire at the same time. We applied for a grant this year. We will apply again next year for the same grant to replace them, but we did not get it, and I've had it budgeted over the next 3 to 4 years for a replacement, one vehicle at a time, so I want to start that process now.
Any comments or questions for the chief? Mr. Hetridge?
Thank you, Mr. Scully. Chief, I see the quantity of 28.
That's how many we own currently, yes.
Okay. And that's enough to supply every volunteer fireman and so forth?
They're assigned to seating positions on the apparatus. So each vehicle carries so many of them. Nobody has their own personal one.
Okay.
They have personal face pieces, but temporarily they're not going to have them depending on which rig they're on until we get to the point where we can replace all those too.
Okay, thank you.
And the administration's asking this to go forward tonight for its first reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Item C under new business is a repealing of section 373.10 of the riding on sidewalks. Administration is asking that this go forward for its first reading. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you know, with the installation of new sidewalks in town, we've been thinking through a lot of issues that impact sidewalks and our residents. And one of the issues is the inability of our code to ride bicycles on sidewalks in commercial areas. I'm not sure how commercial areas define at this point, but in the interest of protecting our children and also presuming that people have good sense, we would like to repeal a small code section that prohibits the riding of bicycles on sidewalks.
Mr. Vaca?
I'm sorry, we would like to eliminate
Mr. Vaca?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if I agree with that situation. I think when you get talking bicycles, you're talking a possible safety factor. These sidewalks aren't really that wide. I believe there's a state law that prohibits bikes on sidewalks. I realize maybe cities can override it, but maybe we could modify this to say tricycles, youth bikes, but not, I don't agree with repealing this or taking it off. I'm sure there's kids on bikes that probably will be using them. If there's somebody walking, you know, the person's got to get off the sidewalk in order for the bike to go by. I don't know if I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaca. Mr. Hetridge?
He touched on my point.
Mr., did you have a comment, Mr. Hetridge?
No, he,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr.
Okay.
Vaca.
Ms. Grandillo?
Thank you very much. I'm on the other side of the fence from you on that, only because we put in our path in Walden, and that was one of our biggest issues, is they still wanted the kids riding in the street. And it's like, why can't they ride on there? So rather than having children in the street. I think the people you see on bikes who are avid bike riders are still gonna stay in the street, but I think children need to be on sidewalks, so I was glad to see this. Thank you.
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, this was not lightly done. I actually been thinking about this for a while. I had discussions with the law director. We could, as Mr. Baca suggests, make complicated ordinance that would, would just complicate the enforcement of what are pleasurable activities. And I have been working with the service director to try to install bike lanes where possible around the city as we pave the streets. But frankly, we don't have enough room on any of our streets to put bike lanes. I have driven down Shaker Boulevard and Shaker Heights, and they have now dedicated one lane, a two-lane, one-way sign of traffic to bikes, and you literally have to move over if you're in a car. I would much rather have be able where it makes sense to ride on the sidewalks. And, I agree with Mrs. Granillo that, I think those who are avid bikers are going to be going down the streets anyway, and frankly, we still don't have enough sidewalks to bike on. I think it's an important, I really to allow people to use cars.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. West 14th as well downtown just did the same thing. They took an entire lane going both ways, going north and south, and they dedicated it to just bikes. It's a mess, but it is what it is. It'll get even worse once they open up the ramp onto 90 again. But yeah, I mean, I have concerns from the standpoint of people riding road bikes on the sidewalk. Road bikes are the high-end bikes that are really fast. I mean, this wouldn't require anybody to ride this on the sidewalks. It would just permit families and kids to ride on the sidewalk. If we were saying bicyclists have to use the sidewalk, I would be opposed to that. But I think what we're doing is in the business area, the commercial area, we're giving families the ability to ride their bikes and stay out of harm's way. So, I mean, from that standpoint, it makes sense to me.
Right.
That's all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hattridge?
Thank you, Mr. Scully. I'm going to try one more time. After having about 3 or 4 minutes to think this over, I'm looking back in my mind, when I first got on council, talking about bike paths. And at that time, I kept on saying, why don't we do as many bike paths as we can versus sidewalks, because with bike paths, people can drive a bike or they can walk on it. And also, I also said that state law, I thought it was state law anyway, so that you cannot ride a bicycle on a sidewalk. So I have to think this over again. In Four Seasons and in Woods of Aurora, there are just a couple of subdivisions that I have seen people walking a lot, and probably 80% of the people walk on the street. Seriously, they do. Maybe that's because some of our sidewalks are not safe enough, but and I see kids riding bicycles on the sidewalk. So it's kind of darn if you do and darn if you don't. I clean that up for you guys. So I don't think I'd have a problem with it after thinking about it and trying to vision what I've seen in the neighborhoods. But again, I'd still like to see more bike paths with the city because they're wider. So I don't have a problem with it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Hattridge. That might have been an opposite day, you know.
Yeah.
Mr. Vaca?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know what? I think, first of all, I need a ruling from the state of Ohio. I'm sorry. I believe the state of Ohio says you cannot ride a bicycle on a sidewalk. Number two, if you're going to, the ultimate roadway is Glenwood Boulevard in Reminder. That's the ultimate. It's walkway, bikeway together. And I would like to see that. I've said this before, I'm gonna say it again. I'd like to see that happen in the lake area because of the fact that traffic has increased tremendously. In the meantime, I realize the serious biker is gonna stay on the road. They will. I'm afraid of these young kids with regular bikes challenging walkers. I can see that happening. I can really see that happening. The walker's going to end up having to go off of the sidewalk. That includes skateboards too. Does that keep skateboards off of sidewalks also? And you're saying business district. Is this also include residential, where there's residential sidewalks? So I'm not really keen on this at this point. We're not going to pass it right away, so I have some time to think about it. I will move it on to council, but that's as far as I'm going to go with it. Thank you.
Mr. DePiero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the state law, I will do another review of that. My understanding the last time I checked, which was recently, is that bicycles are permitted on sidewalks generally. However, through our home rule authority, we can legislate in an area like that because it is not a statewide concern. So if the city were to wish to prohibit bicycle riding on sidewalks or to permit it, we could do it as a home rule municipality. So, but I'll do some follow up. But that's my opinion.
I mean, if you looked at the way our ordinance is written, it says no riding within a business district, which would then indicate that you are allowed to in a development or in a residential area, so it would be permitted currently. Mr. Kovach?
Mr. Chairman, well, in Ward 2, we have ditch riding. We walk, we ride in the street, so I mean, it's kind of hard to, I'd go along with this, but it's kind of hard when you don't have the width to put a path. You'd have to fill in all the ditches to do a bicycle path, but maybe at some time that'll happen.
That what you refer to as a dirt bike?
Yeah, dirt bike, yeah.
Mr. Kovach, you're going to have to show us how that's done, okay? Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to address a comment that Mr. Buckman made regarding bike lanes in the Water Lake area. And that 43 is scheduled to date next year, and it was every year through a grant. And Mr. Chairman and I discussed extensively how we can also apply to the line. So I am really going to try to do that, see what we
Mr. Backus?
Well, that's good news, Mayor. Is now 43. Now we're only talking from Squires to Bainbridge, right? You're not talking the whole road because the road was just done about 8 years ago, 7 years
Mayor?
ago.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Baca, there are different parts of 43 that are talking. Like Squires North, and something south to that.
Right.
But I have also talked to him about the possibility of striping one of the that's not within for bike.
Okay, Councilman Cudley, when I refer to Glenwood Boulevard, I'm also referring to when Orchard Avenue is due for resurfacing, which it's been due for the last 10 years. If that is what I'm referring to as making it wide enough, and you're talking 2 feet added onto each piece of parcel. The road has already been widened once. So you're talking another 2, possibly 3 at the most. And then we don't have this hassle with kids in the street. You have this set bike walkway on each side of the street connecting from Reminderville to East Boulevard. That's what I was referring to. And then that way there is no ordinance saying you can't have a bike on a sidewalk because it's actually in a bikeway. So, for what it's worth, I'll let it go, but I don't know if I'm going to go all the way through it. Thank you.
The administration is asking that this be forwarded to council for its first reading.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded forward to council for first reading this evening. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item D under new business is the schedule of charges for ball fields. Parks and Rec Department, Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For approximately about the last year or so, the Recreation Advisory Committee has been discussing what we charge for our baseball field reservation fees and everything. And so kind of looking at how the usage was this past summer, talking into different communities and seeing what they do, in an effort to accommodate all the various groups that we have that use the fields, these are the recommendations. The emphasis was not to change anything for the Aurora Baseball League, who is the primary user of our fields. And so there are no changes for them. They currently pay the $10 per person per season utilization fee, so that would be their charge. That does not change. So largely this goes more towards non-resident teams was the large emphasis. Changing the resident rate from 50% of the roster up to 75, which based on last year's numbers would affect none of the teams because they were either all 90 to 100% residents or they were 45% non-residents. So it wouldn't affect any of those. So what we did is also went to a flat fee for the non-resident team. So rather than $20 an hour, we were just saying $40 a game. It's about the same thing normally. But we also wanted to add a practice price in. We don't maintain the fields to the same level, obviously, for practices and worry about chalk and field dry and all the other maintenance requirements. But we do feel that there is an impact that those teams have when they practice on those fields as far as wear and tear. So we kind of came up with either a $10 per practice or $100 a season. The reason that we don't want to have to administratively track whether they had practices or not on rain and all the other stuff that happens obviously throughout the course of a season. So it'd be easier just to charge a flat season rate. And then we segmented out the varsity baseball field, which is again city property. It's Field 5, known as Sherwin Field. Large reason is obviously that is becoming a nice amenity or a great amenity through various efforts from ourselves, the Aurora Baseball League, and the Continental Amateur Baseball Association in significant upgrades. And so not only did we want to affect that and kind of distance itself that from the other fields, but we upped the price for that. So resident teams who are not part of the Aurora Baseball League would pay $30 per use, whether it's practice or game, which again at this point it looks like this year that will be maybe one team, depends on how rosters, but potentially no resident teams that are outside the ABL. Same thing for a tournament game. Non-resident teams would not be permitted to use the field on a regular basis, but they could rent the field for a tournament at $200 a game. So a significant jump, but because of the venue and the demand, as well as also the emphasis of trying to maximize the resident use of the field, as well as minimize the impact of use on the field, the committee felt that that was a fair and appropriate number for the non-resident team if they want to use that field. Obviously, a non-resident team would still be able to use the JV field, which is down by Field 9, would still handle that age group. So if they didn't want to pay the $200 a game, they could pay the $40 a game and go to the JV field. So we aren't eliminating outside teams from using fields of that size. We're just emphasizing the importance of the field number 5 for resident priority as well as impact on the field.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to stress that initially I was very skeptical about these increases, but I had, think about it, also had a residence, not revenue, but what we're talking about is on protect the rural tax dollars for your community, whether it be through maintenance and upkeep of these fields, but also the use of these providers are less used as frequently as these.
Right, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hattridge.
Thank you, Mr. Cudley. At first blush, I agree with this. My question is, on the Ed Sherman field, is that thing locked? Where people can't just walk in there and practice it, or what?
Mr. Kraus?
Chairman and Councilman, yes.
Okay, so that would keep people that don't pay out.
Correct.
I just want to comment on Field 5, by the way. Jim knows Ed Sherman was involved in ABL for years and years and years and years and years. That field is probably one of the best fields right now within this whole area. The way you guys have set that up. So kudos to the Parks and Rec Department on that and the CABA. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, this will go on to our regular agenda. I'll need a motion to that effect.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to forward this to council for its regular agenda. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item E under new business is the Harmon Road Waterline Project. Service Department Administration's asking that this be forwarded and take action this evening. Mr. Chekai.
Service Department is requesting approval to move forward with design services for Harmon Road. The water line that runs down Harmon Road is beyond its serviceable life, as have been the other water mains that we've been replacing in the area. As you know, Shawnee Trail is on council's agenda right now. GPD Group we requested GPD Group submit a proposal to us, and their proposals for the amount of $44,000. We've used, GPD was formerly Foresight Engineering, and Foresight was bought out by GPD. The project manager working for GPD is still there. He still is our representative and our contact. They have done Meadowview, Windward. They did the Emergency Ridgeway project. They designed Shawnee. They also did the Eldridge project. So they have a template from which they're drawing from to be able to give us this price, which is an exceptional discount to the city.
Thank you. Comments or questions? We need a motion to forward this to council for action this evening. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Hattridge.
Thank you. Mr. Jeskai, is this the whole, when you say the Harmon Road, is this inclusive of only Harmon Road from beginning to end, or is this about other roads involved in this whole area?
There's two other roads involved, so there's a paper street, Willard's a paper street in that area,
Okay.
but we have a water line that runs continuously down from 80 through Willard, and then also down New Hudson. So it'll connect into the Shawnee improvements that's on the agenda right now.
So the New Hudson, where it ties in New Hudson, is that like half the road or a third of the road, or help me out?
Can you please clarify the question?
If it ties into New Hudson, is there going to be work on New Hudson itself?
Yes.
How much?
The entire length from Harmon down to Shawnee.
Okay, all right. That's what I was trying to get in my mind. Thank you, sir.
We have a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item F under new business is employees generally. Who's speaking to this, Mayor?
Thank you very much. As you know, the city lost, the city non-council side, lost an employee, but council stole our wonderful events for us. And we have identified a new support manager.
Chief? It's just a regular? Okay. Okay. Well, if you lost your events coordinator, we found her, so. Can't have her back. All right. Okay. The administration has asked that this be forwarded to council for action this evening.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to forward this to council for action this evening. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. That brings us to the end of our new business agenda. We do have one item under miscellaneous, and that is funding on infrastructure. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, council members. As you know, we've been talking about the need to have this conversation for several months, particularly in the wake of the Shawnee Waterline project that we're doing, which will be approved for funding this year, but we're going to start right after the first of the year, better advance the rent. And what the service director and the finance director have done is prepare a projection of water line needs, only investments over the next 15 years. And with cost projections as well. Now, the cost projection for 2016 includes a potential 10% water rate increase. I'm calling attention to that because I don't believe that would be effective early enough once the legislation is presented and everything else, for it really to impact our revenues in 2016. So, having said that, I think the Harmon Road project, we will have to fund by current monies that have that fee increase. I am right now not saying we need a fee increase. We are, in the process of obtaining a water rate study, which will give you better guidance on what rates are charged around the area, to potentially make determinations to raise the water rates. But we are looking for ways to do these important infrastructure projects without levies. And that's kind of what this illustrates, using our various funds, although also potentially looking at Ohio Public Works as well, to help fund these projects, because they're not insubstantial. And I will also tell you that the Harmon Road project, according to my last conversation with Mr. True, is probably $1.1 million project. So these are not insubstantial, but nevertheless, this presents good news in terms of funding these projects. And so I want Mr. Collins to explain that further and answer the questions.
Mr. Paul?
Yes, you know, I passed around a little synopsis from the City and County magazine that basically says one of the greatest fears and problems and needs of the city are infrastructure. And that we've all know. We know roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. We've all heard those stories. But there's also another one out there too, and that's the pension area. And those are the two areas in which cities and states are now faced with substantial cost increases. In Ohio, we're very, very lucky with our pension plans here. We're pretty well funded, and so we're not facing the same problems that California and Illinois and New York and a few of the other ones that are not as well funded as they are in the pension area. When we come down to the infrastructure, Aurora itself is in a very, very good position because we have grown over the last 20 years. so most of our infrastructure is only 20 years old. When you look at most cities, you look at Garfield and Mayfield Heights and Highland, et cetera, et cetera. They're so old in many of those areas. Their pipes in the ground are ancient. They're like we're looking at in the Highlands here. Our Highlands are 100 years old or 80 years old. You know, that's an old system, and so it tends that the cost to repair that is great. With Aurora, yes, we do have some old parts, but the majority of the city is young. And so that gives us a leg up when we talk about financing. What I proposed in here is with a rate increase. And that was because I think it was the easiest way to, and the most flexible way to finance this. When we started this over a year ago, I think I gave you a little write-up on 6 different approaches that we could use. And as we look down and we look back at those 6 different ways, I mean, one was an income tax increase. Well, that's really anti-productive when you're attempting to still build your businesses. A real estate tax increase, which again is taxing everybody within the city, even those that don't have water and sewer operations or water operations. So you're really taxing people that aren't getting the benefit of it. I think another one was special assessments on property, where you just put in the street, you're just going to special assess those residents on the street. And that really creates a problem within the city too, because then those houses become less desirable for people wanting to move into the city because they have a pretty large assessment against the property itself. And so you shy away from that, and most cities, when they talk about infrastructure, have stayed away from the special assessments just because of that nature, that it unfavorably impacts those residents who have to undertake that burden of the assessment. So when we really come down to it, of those 6 things that I recommended, one was the surplus and the other one was a rate increase. And that's basically where we're at. We are utilizing surplus dollars as well as existing water fund dollars to make the improvements that the mayor has referred to on Shawnee and probably also in Marvin here now. And so we will be utilizing a substantial amount, up to $2 million or so of our surplus dollars to do these particular projects. But I look at it and say, well, what does the rate increase cost us? And the water department has given us back an estimate, which you have there, saying that a 10% or 5% increase, or a 10% increase would require about a $13 per quarter for the average user in Florida. And I think the commercial industrial is obviously $125 per quarter. But that again is still, in my opinion, still a nominal increase to ensure that when you turn on that tap, the water flows. And you don't have the uncertainty that the pipes are going to continually break. So we need, as a city, to replace our existing infrastructure. And I think that this proposal gives us that flexibility. One of the things that some people say, well, why don't you issue bonds and let's do it up front? Well, the problem with issuing bonds and doing it up front is that the cost of it is extremely high. You're going to have the lawyer costs, you're going to have the underwriting costs, and the printing costs for the bond itself. And then and the interest costs that are not part of this proposal at all. In addition, when you borrow and you say you're going to issue that bond, you're going to have the bond for, let's say, a 20-year bond. The cost of repayment, principal and interest on that is about $1.2 million to $1.3 million. The revenue that we currently have doesn't support the repayment of that principal and interest out of the water fund. So really a bonding issue will not work and will not effectively resolve the problems. It doesn't still give us the flexibility, because on a bond you got the $20 million up front and you got to make all the improvements. Well, what happens in the 12th year when another pipe breaks or another thing, and the major, you've already used your bond monies up and you're paying back at the dollar that will not free any additional dollars to do the work for the other project. So this gives you all the flexibility, because you can stop, you can start, you can do it as you please. And I think that the numbers that are in here are very, very realistic. There are some assumptions that we would get the loans from the Ohio Public Works Commission. have in the past, and those are at 0 interest rate. Whether they continue in the future is again another question. Mr. True is in the process that he will start making the applications for these projects as soon as he returns early next year. And all I can say is that because infrastructure is such a great need, I would think that this project, these types of projects will continue to get funding from the state of Ohio and maybe through the federal government. So I feel confident in looking at this, that the rate increase that I propose is sufficient that if any of these things go wrong, if we don't have a loan in 1 year or 2 years, that we have enough within the fund itself to make some improvements and to continue the program as it exists. You see the bottom line cash that's always left in there in my analysis. And that is sufficient to say, well, all right, if we don't have 1 year of loans, we'll be able to still continue the project with another street or two. I think this is probably the best way for the city. This example here still gives you $300,000 a year to address broken water lines, et cetera, and any other infrastructure problems that may exist while we're still replacing the pipes in the ground. The loans that we borrow from the Ohio Public Works Commission, and I totaled it out here after 15 years of work. And that basically says we borrowed about $5 million if we were to get this. We're also repaying this, and that is the last line of the expense. We're repaying that at $2 million after 5 years. So at the end of 15 years, at the end of 15 years, we really still have $3 million outstanding on that loan. But again, it's at 0 interest rate. So again, the revenues are still sufficient to meet all of those payments as we go out. And I think that will continue into the future. I think this is the easiest and best solution that we can have for this type of a program. The mayor mentioned that this only addresses water lines. You do realize that we have sewer lines there too. But again, as most of you are aware, we borrowed a substantial amount of money, $10, $11, $12 million, when we improved the sewer treatment plants. When we improved the sewer treatment plants back in 99 and 2000 and so forth, those loans all start coming due and finished and completed in 2018, 19, and 20. And that is about $770,000 a year that we will, the sewer fund will not have to make in the future. That is sufficient to begin its own infrastructure repair program and replacement program. So all I'm saying is that when you look in the future, you have water and you have a very good source of funding for sewer in the future. So feel confident that what you see can probably be done without another increase in rates at that point in time.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to explain what you heard about in the vote of the Senate Council tonight, which is the Harmon Road Water Line Project engineering. We budgeted money this year, as you know, to do the Shawnee Water Line. And it came in low enough that we had enough money left over in that fund to also do the engineering on another water line project. Because Harmon and Shawnee, some of the work that was done on Shawnee complements the work that will need to be done for the engineering on Harmon. Mr. True thought it was a good idea if we could, since we had money left over, to try to get the Harmon engineering done this year. And then we can bid it early next year and potentially get a better deal on it, because we also will be working on the Shawnee one next year. Anyway, there's been considerable point on that. But the engineering has to be done before we can actually bid the project.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, Mr. Paul, I wanted to clarify, you had said the Highlands, this is actually the club section, Old Town allotment. So I just want to clarify that, and then, going back to something, and Mr. True isn't here to defend himself, so that's perfect for me. Something that he had said over the summer with respect to, oh, Justice, you're good. With respect to Ohio Public Works loans, and that at the time, that our water rates are currently so low that it's a barrier to getting those loans, because we're among the lowest in the state, I believe is what he had said sometime over the summer. So this puts us in a better position, I hope. And I'm assuming that barrier to getting those loans is the ability to pay them back and them seeing a continuous revenue source. So I'm operating under the assumption that this 10% here puts us in a better position to get those Ohio Public Works loans and be able to borrow this money at 0% interest.
Yes, a schedule of this nature would obviously help. It's just like going to the bank and saying, how are you going to pay your payments?
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hadridge.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Mr. Paul, or the mayor, whoever can answer the question, what is the percentage of city water users versus well users?
Pardon? How many?
Yeah, what's the percentage? Anybody have any idea? Like,
My guess is around 800 well and all the rest of 5,200 city houses, or 6,200, I forget what the number was, 6,200 or?
so it's like 90%?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the figure was around 900 on wells.
And I know this figure came up a couple of years ago, but I couldn't remember. Number two, just make sure this is right in my mind. This increase you're talking about is for water usage, not sewer usage.
Water usage.
Okay. And number three, and this is a question for maybe Mr. Chastain. Now that we're getting Cleveland water, and it's a softer water, it's supposed to be better for our pipes. I'm thinking in the future that hopefully we won't have the problems that we have now by having hard water for so many years. You have all the buildup of minerals and so forth. Anybody want to answer that question or agree with me or
Mr.
disagree?
Cheka.
I can't speak to the chemistry of the water versus Cleveland versus Portage County. The main reason older water mains have issues is because they get a buildup on the inside. But softer water generally has less minerals and less deposits. So if it is indeed softer water, then you would anticipate less problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vaca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This 666 got the devil in it, I'll tell you. That, what happened to the maintenance cost that was added on several years ago? Wasn't there an $80 some type of fee added on to the water
Mr. Paul?
for this reason?
Yes, there was. And you see that in the very first line, the annual water capital billing charge.
Okay.
That is still the revenue that goes into the water capital account, yes.
Well, I had one resident complaining because of the fact she's paying this $80 or whatever it is, and yet we're doing water line work over somewhere else, and she's not benefiting by it. I don't know, the 666 is, it's going to be hard to swallow for some of these people that are on a fixed income. It really is. And I'm not sure if I can agree with that. That's 5% increase, is that correct?
I projected a 10%.
10%.
Okay, what's the, okay,
13.
oh, 5%.
The letter from the water was at 5%.
Okay. Well, I don't know how I'm going to try to relate this back to the person that doesn't like to pay the $80 to fix somebody else's water line. Now you're going to add another $6.66 every 3 months. I don't know. It's just
Mayor?
hard to bite.
Mayor?
Very much, Mr. Chairman. We've actually had considerable discussion on this internally about the best way to fund water line projects. And we did talk about, how you can assess But it is my feeling in a modern municipality that it is absolutely the municipality's responsibility to provide clean, good water to all of its residents and anyone passing through. And I do not believe that is something that is appropriately assessed to individual homeowners.
Okay. Any, Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an answer for Mr. Vaca. You can tell her that if she's benefiting, if she's enjoying the pump that we installed to remove the sewage from that area of the city last year, that didn't benefit the rest of the city. It's along the same lines. The rest of the city didn't benefit from that pump being replaced or, and us having a backup on the shelf. So same sort of deal.
All right, thank you. So, Mary, you'll have a recommendation coming at some point in the future, correct?
Yes,
All right. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda, but before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I want to just close by saying congratulations to Mr. Wolf, Mr. Hatridge, Mr. Kovach, and Mr. Horvat, who are not here, for their reelection to council. It's nice that we're going to have the same group of individuals to carry us on with the work that we've been doing over the past years. So congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hatridge.
And I would like to say the same about Mr. Covey.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.